Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining today, and thank you for those that are watching this replay. Today, we'll be talking about what is an EBS asserter, really in the constructs of Oracle's cloud infrastructure. Before we jump in, again, a big thank you to those customers, partners, those that are just out here trying to learn more. Thank you for your partnership, for your business, for the opportunity to earn your business. And thank you for those who are just here to learn. Awesome. Thank you so much. So when you think of what is the EBS Asserter, well, it fits into a series of webinars that are recorded for your viewing pleasure, all around the Active Directory bridge, provisioning bridge, syncing users into IDCS, or what are multiple IDCS domains. This is a standalone part of that series. However, if you choose to learn more in the relative to some of the terms and things that we'll be talking about, feel free to check out those webinars on the various social media platforms out there. So when you think of what is an EBS asserter, if this is something new or you heard about it or somebody pointed you in this direction to say, all right, you're in your current situation, you should look into the EBS asserter, or you just happen to come across it on a blog post or Oracle's documentation. Yes, there is a lot of rich information available online. This is to help bubble up and aggregate a lot of that information to give you that starting point, along with some direction that you can use this as a jumping off point to say, okay, I had this, went to watch this webinar. I now was able to go and take the information there that gave me that starting point. And once I dove into the Oracle documentation, it makes a lot more sense to me. Or I now understand from the higher level architecture direction which way we should go. That's really what the purpose of this conversation. But when you think of the EBS asserter, you have an on-prem EBS implementation. You're not ready to move to Fusion. However, you are running some applications within the Oracle Analytics, or I should say within Oracle's cloud, such as Oracle Analytics Cloud. And you want to use SSO for logging into either of the applications, OAC or on-prem EBS. Well, the EBS asserter is going to be that mechanism to leverage the authentication within OCI in order to not have to re-enter your username and password when you get into EBS, and the same with OAC. So think of this as the EBS asserter as that handshake from on-prem up to OCI. So when you think of just from a logical flow, I like to use pictures. Pictures tell a story, sometimes easier to digest information. So if we just look at that those same words, but in a picture format, we can see here as to where you have the on-premise. Naturally, today you might be leveraging Active Directory. For some of this, you might be leveraging local database authorization for logging into EBS. Now you want to leverage a similar construct for jumping from EBS into OAC. I'm Mike John. I've been in the data and analytics space, the technology space for several decades, working with customers of all sizes across the globe, and then regionally, and more of that startup and mid-cap space, really helping customers maximize their infrastructure, their data and analytics, and whether that's within Oracle or a hybrid or a mixture of technologies that include Oracle, got you covered. At the end of the day, technology is important, but it's really that combining of technology into what are the business opportunities. And those opportunities are, we want to get into new lines of business. We have mergers and acquisitions. We need to ingest and assimilate an acquisition. Perhaps we need to divest an acquisition for various reasons. And perhaps you're just looking for cost optimization and reduce IT complexity. At the end of the day, it needs to all align with the business and the business value that's being driven by the initiatives that this technology is supporting. Yes, you have to understand how the nuts and bolts of the technology work in order to maximize those business opportunities, those business investments, but it really needs to be from a secondary perspective. How does the technology fit in order to support the underlying driving goal for the business or for the organization as a whole, and really doing that through partnerships. The goal is definitely not to have people on your team for years upon years. We understand that you want to be self-sufficient and your team is going to grow. It may have ebbs and flows to that growth, but really we want to be your partner along the way. And really during those projects, we want to make sure that you're enabled so that when we get to a critical juncture, that the team is ready, your team is ready to take over and manage and run the technology. They've been on part of the journey, so they understand the decisions that were made along the way. They've had that opportunity to ramp up and educate and learn in a live fire real world situation, your environment, so that they are self-sufficient at the time when we ramp off. And so a lot of the technologies that we work with, really revolve around whether it's Oracle Analytics Cloud, the on-prem version of Oracle BI, doing upgrades, really doing a lot of the data warehouse work, the data transformation, moving from ETL to an ELT direction, whether it's the data governance, building the team, analytics, machine learning, and driving towards, or helping you drive towards those business goals, and regardless of whether that's a marketing, finance, operations, your industry, all of those pieces we're able to cover you. So let's dive further into the EBS Asserter. So for some organizations, the EBS Asserter might not even be needed because you're all in Oracle. When I say all in, your ecosystem looks very red at the end of the day. You have a mix of cloud and on-prem. You perhaps have been going down this journey for a while, and you see for the foreseeable future that you'll continue down with a heavy Oracle investment. Nothing wrong with that. For some organizations, Oracle is a key component to their overall enterprise architecture, but it's not the only component. There's a lot of other technologies that are involved. There's really when you think of from the Oracle ecosystem, it's more of a hybrid approach here, where it could be Oracle and SAP. If you're a large global manufacturer, for various reasons, through acquisition based or how decision making is made, you may have a mix of Oracle and SAP ERP. You might be migrating towards consolidating onto one ERP platform. But at the end of the day, you also could be a large Salesforce customer. Could have a large Azure implementation, maybe your AWS, maybe your GCP, and your identity provider could be Azure Active Directory or Entra. It could be something else that you have. And there's a lot of complexity that can go in, especially when you think of, I have my internal applications for my internal customers, but then I have external facing applications for external customers. Those are partners, or those could be consumers, could be suppliers. So lots of different reasons for that. Complexity can get very high quickly. And as much as it would be nice to be able to say, oh, based upon what our company is today, we would have made technology decisions and business decisions with a different lens 10, 15 years ago. So the reality of the journey over the last 10 years is where you are today, you're trying to say, okay, where do we need to consolidate cloud and on-prem applications? How do we need to consolidate external identities? How do we need to consider our internal and external consumers, aka customers? All of those decisions, there are different key projects that you're going to undertake every year across a lot of those different lenses within your organization, which are going to drive the efficiencies, but it takes time. And so while you are buying time, how do we make these things work together so that those end customers don't have a negative experience? However, security is extremely important, but you want to make sure that things are done efficiently as well. So when you think of where does this EBS asserter fit? So really the EBS asserter itself, it physically sits on premise. You have a separate VM where you have WebLogic running on that, where this EBS asserter application will be hosted and running. And it is going to be that vehicle that says, oh, okay, I have all my users within the Identity Cloud service. Let's integrate EBS into Identity Cloud service so that when somebody logs in, one, IDCS knows who that person is. They know who Mike Jelen is. So they can go and access that on-prem EBS, presuming I'm authorized to go and access that. And likewise with Oracle Analytics Cloud, presuming I'm authorized to access OAC, IDCS is going to naturally hand off and say, I already know who Mike is. I trust Mike. Mike is authorized to use EBS or OAC or other applications that are running within your Oracle Cloud infrastructure. All at the same time, you're leveraging your existing Active Directory that you have implemented. Now, let's take the scenario that what if your EBS today, where you don't have the EBS asserter, your existing EBS, for whatever reason, we'll say from a external customer perspective, those users are local within EBS. Great, you can still leverage IDCS. What you would need to do in that situation is load the users into IDCS. They'll have a one-time activity to change their password, but after that, now those users can log into EBS or they can log into OAC with the same IDCS credentials. So now you have that single sign-on with your Oracle Cloud and your on-prem EBS environments. So very handy from that perspective. When you think of from an Oracle BI construct, on Oracle BI, if you already had an EBS to OBI, because OBI and EBS are on premise, there's a lot of integration that Oracle had built in, leveraging cookies, which from a security perspective, hey, everything is on premise. We're not worried about, we're less worried about getting hacked by a nefarious third party. So leveraging cookies was that old handshake. So for those of you that have been using OBI and EBS on-prem for a while, this will look very familiar to you, where that ICX session cookie is getting picked up by the initialization block within OBI, and then you get your repository variables or session variables based upon that cookie. Great. When you think of in the future to say, well, OBI, that's, we need to migrate to OAC. That's our longer term direction. So OBI will migrate to OBI, or I should say OBI will migrate to OAC first, so they're up in the cloud. However, EBS, we're not quite ready to migrate to Oracle Fusion. That's a longer term project, a little bit of a heavier lift. And from a priority perspective, that's not going yet. So all right, we want to continue to leverage from an experience perspective, those users that are using OBI today, we want them to have a very similar, ideally the exact same experience within OAC that they are today. So you want to continue to leverage those users and groups that are within Active Directory. You want to leverage those roles that are in the data warehouse. Remember, your data level security is already in place from a data warehouse perspective. You don't want to have to redo that plumbing within OAC just because you're moving from OBI to OAC. Don't want to leverage the remote data gateway. For those of you that aren't familiar, the remote data gateway enables, if you're running Oracle Analytics Cloud, to connect back to an on-premise database. So think of your data warehouse. The data warehouse hopefully is up in the cloud. It could be Oracle's autonomous data warehouse. You might be, excuse me. You might be running Snowflake. You could be running BigQuery. Lots of other cloud options that your data warehouse might be running in today. And so it's really all about having that same end user experience. So you think of from a path forward. All right, I mentioned before that the EBS Asserter has this lightweight Java application. It also runs with WebLogic. And we can't use that session cookie that we had talked about before. The reason we can't use it, when you think of cookies, well, the cookie apocalypse, where cookies are from a general web technology perspective, the world has gone away from leveraging cookies. But the reason they stopped leveraging cookies is to, make it harder to hack. So cookies are a potential way that hackers could backdoor into your ecosystem or your application. So removing that security threat, that security possibility, reason why cookies are no longer supported, which makes sense. And so we think of, well, how does this connectivity or communication now happen? If we're not using cookies, what are we using? Well, we're using APIs. And so APIs are, for those of you that aren't familiar, it's a predetermined, very highly secure way to communicate, where each application exposes certain data elements, as long as you have the right secure handshake in order to enable that communication. So far more secure than it's ever been before. So whether the application is in the cloud, on-prem, or a combination of those two, APIs is the way to go instead of leveraging that cookie. And this is a general industry standard to use APIs or JDBC connections in order to handle the communication, whether it's security, whether it's data, whether it's application integration. Everything revolves around REST APIs and JDBC. So what this future state would look like, perhaps you are in the world where, great, I have the EBS Asserter, I have on-prem EBS. Well, I also have an identity cloud, but then with an OAC, we can see it's a much more simple approach here in regards to the init blocks that you need to leverage, but your data is in the same place. In this particular example, and the data is in Snowflake, just to give you a mixed bag or mixed world of how this works. So when you think of beyond Oracle's cloud, if you are all in on Oracle, awesome, great. If you're not all in on Oracle because of perhaps acquisitions, you've had a number of leadership changes over time, and so newer technologies have been introduced, newer to the organization. And so it's all about, well, what should our future be, or what considerations should we have down the road? And I'm not talking down the road in 6 to 12 months. It's really beyond that of what things should we start to look into and start to understand as, one, our options, two, what are mature technologies out there that we should be considering. Of course, lots and lots of startups, and there's nothing wrong with that. Some organizations are very comfortable leveraging startup technology, and others say we need to take a more conservative approach. So wherever you lie, we love to talk to you and give you a roadmap of art of what's possible within your organization, really based upon where you're today. And it's that strategy, or that high level, here's where you're at, here's where you could go, here's where other organizations like you are going or have already gone, so that you have that understanding and allows you to start getting your head around where could we go as an organization. But it's all about you at the end of the day as to what that conversation and that roadmap looks like. Thank you for joining today. Thank you for those that are watching us today or every day that you're out here. We appreciate you taking the time. Feel free to reach out to us. We'd love to talk to you about your individual situation and make sure that we get you going in the right direction that makes sense and is most beneficial to you. So feel free to reach out to us, social media, our website. We'd love to hear from you. Feel free to drop us an email as well. But thank you, everybody, for joining our What is an EBS Asserter webinar, and we'll see you on the next one.